is go time. Welcome to a September 19th edition of the PressProsMagazine.com Monday Huddle. I'm Bruce Hooley. That handsome man beside me is Sonny Folks from his safe lair somewhere in Miami County, Ohio, with a beautiful backdrop behind him. And we're excited to have you guys with us to talk about week 5, already halfway through the regular season of the high school football season. I can't believe it. And we have a big volleyball game to promote and to talk about, which we will do momentarily with the head coach of the Marion Local Flyers, Anthony Chappel. But good evening to you, first of all, Mr. Folks.
Great to be with you again, Bruce. It was, and I concur with you, by the way, that every year that I get older, the football season goes faster. Mm-hmm. I'm just blown away that we're already through 5 weeks of the season already. Of course, you know, when you start in the middle of August, and I think I will live long enough to see them start a high school football on the 4th of July. So I'm not amazed by anything anymore. If they can sell a ticket or if they can add it a playoff game, why, you know, we could be backed up till spring nearly. But anyway, it's week 5's in the books. Week 6, where I was working on the picks page already today. And before we get too deep into this, I want to address somebody, a friend who said, hey, you know, I'm really impressed. He said, you know, I went to school with you and I watched your show. And he said, I would never have dreamed that you could literally orchestrate and pull off a show like you guys do on Monday night. He said, it really does look pretty professional. So he said, I'm surprised you do that. It ain't me. It's the man I left. It's all the years with ESPN and Cleveland and Columbus. This guy is the button guru. He knows the buttons to push. So
we are going to stream the show live tonight on PressProsMagazine.com site. I'll finagle with that while I'm sitting here, so I excuse my turned head if I do.
Well, that's okay, but kudos to you, Mr. Hooley.
Well, thank you very much. And before we get into week 5 of the high school football season, and we had some headline games with Tip taking down Stebbins, with Marion Local winning a battle of 2 top 3 teams in their respective divisions, taking down New Bremen. And here in Central Ohio, well, we had Dublin Jerome eking out a win over Hilliard Bradley. And we had an upset victory by Gahanna Lincoln over New Albany, knocking the Eagles up the ranks of the unbeaten. We have, as I said, a volleyball match that we'll be covering tomorrow night between the top 2 teams in the state of Ohio in their respective divisions. That's New Bremen and Marion Local. So let's welcome to the show the head coach of the Marion Local Flyers, Mr. Anthony Chappel. Hello, Anthony. How you doing tonight? Anthony, can you hear me? We are doing great. We are doing great. So tomorrow night, you're going to battle Diana Kramer and the New Bremen Cardinals. And Mr. Folks tells me that people will be hanging from the rafters at Marion Local Gymnasium. Is that a correct expectation on his part, Anthony?
I would expect a extremely large crowd and a rowdy one, both sides.
Yeah, I mean,
per the usual.
I'm excited, Anthony, to get there tomorrow night and see that because I have so much admiration. And I want to admit to you, 5 years ago, I didn't know volleyball from a croquet mallet. I really didn't. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the culture of it. And I want to talk to you about that tonight. 2, sure. Atmosphere, you know, just to go into a game. 3, how well it lends itself, I think, as well as any other sport, to television, because I watch and I've learned a lot about volleyball from watching the Big Ten Network and watching Penn State and Nebraska and Ohio State and all those great teams in the
Minnesota, Purdue. Yeah, you can go on and on with the Big
Ten. I just think it's a fascinating sport. I think it's underprofiled, which is why I wanted to have you come on tonight and talk about it. And I'm tickled to get the opportunity to just send the good news about volleyball, and particularly tomorrow night's match with New Bremen and Marion Local out to our
Absolutely. Volleyball, I don't know how it's not more popular, because if you think about it, there's a point scored every play. So when you get caught up in soccer and, you know, baseball is America's pastime and football grew real big, you know, NASCAR is a fast moving sport too, but volleyball, there's a point scored every play. So it should be energetic and, you know, very easy for the crowd to fall in love with. I think the difference is, you know, the women's game is a lot more savvy than the men's game. The men's game, there's a lot of freak athletes and they rely on their athleticism more. And they play on an 8-inch higher net. and that ball just moves so much faster. But if you watch the women's game, the amount of like technical merit that the girls need in order to execute just a simple play, it's on another level. And as fast as that ball moves and how fast those girls can respond, and you don't get too much of a breather. You only get 2 quick timeouts, and it's just points coming back and forth. So that's why that momentum swings so big. There's no running out the clock. You have to score 25.
Yeah,
you can't. No stall ball. Like you have to be aggressive.
You know, Tony, one of the things that I really appreciate, and it surprises me that you talk about the athleticism. I think one of the things that impresses me the most is how many great athletes I see in volleyball compared to basketball, compared to some of the other Title IX sports. Sure. I'm blown away by the Paige Joneses, the Olivia Heitkamps, the Lindsay Kennings, and the people in your league alone that can do the things that they do.
I think it's crazy how like Division IV and we kind of tap into Division III around here. The concentration of top-notch schools and athletes and the hard-working mentality of these players. I mean, you're a stone's throw away from everybody here. 10-mile radius around us, and you're just hitting. I mean, you could essentially put together an all-state team multiple times. I'm pretty good friends with most of the coaches in the MAC and the surrounding coaches, and we kind of joke about it. Like, if you were to be able to put together a super team, like I think we could easily compete with, D1, D2 teams, kind of like how we did this weekend on our own. But like, I think a lot of the MAC schools could, and even the Shelby County schools, and, dip around the lake a little bit too. There's a lot of good powerhouses around here, and it's just such a high concentrated area.
Having said that, let me ask you why and how in the world around here, I can name you a dozen volleyball coaches that are on anyone's who's list. In your league, there's Diana. There is Trisha. There is Nikki Etzler.
You can just keep going. Yeah,
you can keep going. There's Greg Snipes. There's Aaron Watkins. There's John Rogers. There's Kim Metz. I don't want to leave anybody out. How did all these people get Amy Steininger, for God's sakes? How did all these people get within a 2-iron of each other off of I-75?
I mean, a lot of those girls women have a branch through St. Henry. You know what I mean? Like that's where they took a lot of pride in it, kind of branched off of there. I don't like giving them credit too often, but you kind of have to in this case. And Steininger came up from Vandalia Butler, and I think she was just a whole nother chip off of a competitive tree. And for her to try to compete against St. Henry, that's kind of probably what drove her. And it just, I don't know, it breeds success, all that competition. And that's what we have around here. And on top of us having like a MAC schedule, we always try to add to it, whether it be, I don't think we really care about division size. We want the best because we know that that's what's going to make us. We don't want any cakewalks.
One other thing I want to add before Bruce jumps in here, and by the way, we're talking with Anthony Chappel, who's the volleyball coach at Marion Local, and I'm just going to tell you this 2 or 3 times while I've got him on here. There is an enormous match tomorrow night between number 1 and number 2 in the state Division IV at Marion Local. Get there early if you want to see this and get a place to sit. I think between Bremen and Marion, it's going to be a hoo-ha, as I like to say. But I want to ask you, one of the things that impresses me is the amount of communal respect, cultural respect that all of you guys have for each other. There's nothing catty about volleyball. If you talk to Matt, he has nothing but good things to say about other coaches and respect. Right. I've never talked to anybody that's any different than that. That's another thing that I think people, if they knew more about, would appreciate.
Yeah. I think it's more of a camaraderie. Like, obviously, you don't coach high school sports to make money. It's not lucrative. It's a terrible financial decision. Because I think it balances out to maybe $1.50 or $2 an hour, something like that. If you just throw in like practice time, extra time in the weight room, just watching film. I think I talked to one of the guys on Huddle, and I said, "Hey, do I watch enough film?" He's like, "I'm pretty sure you're close to the top of this area watches more film than the rest area, and because we're just trying to prepare for each other." And again, that comes down to that competitive spirit. I mean, you look at our Northwest district; it's a big one. We have 6 districts, and somehow, like in Division IV, they haven't really caught on to the whole super sectional idea where we all sit down and kind of seed out. They get to provide a district to the Northeast and the Southwest, and then 4 for the Northwest, instead of letting us all pick, instead of having number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I think one year was the top 4 teams in the state playing in district semis, and they had them all in the same bracket. I don't know that you would ever do that in March Madness. And I know HSA tries to push for competitive balance, and driving's not a competitive advantage. So I know they do it in D1 in the Northwest. I know the Southwest does it. I came from the Central when I coached as an assistant at Dublin Kaufman. They have all 50 teams show up in the gym and pick out of 4 districts there. So I'm praying for that day, because although I do appreciate playing New Bremen, I really don't like seeing them as early as we always have to. It gets you ready, but at the same time, if you can push that one back a little bit, I think monetary wise and competitive wise, like, it makes sense for that game to be later. Or if you think about any of the St. Henry battles back in the day, whether it's St. Henry, Fort Recovery, list the MAC teams, and you can throw in a couple of the other local teams. Those battles should be happening a lot later in the tournament. You would never watch Duke UNC, round 1 or at Dayton in the playing game. So
Anthony Chappel's our guest. He coaches the volleyball team at Marion Local. And Anthony, to speak to the depth, I mean, you guys ticked off some great coaches and some great teams. Did you mention New Knoxville? They're the defending state champion.
Yeah, I know. Like, that's the challenge you go through. And speaking of the MAC, because you got to list all of them, because that is the depth. If you only list 1 or 2, you're definitely leaving 7, 8 teams out. And it really doesn't depend on the sport. It's unanimous across the board. It's just a competitive area, and then everybody takes a lot of pride. Like I said before, my wife, Margot, used to be Margot Moeller. She's the one that allows me to coach by taking care of the home front. I got 5 kids inside. That's why I'm doing this podcast from the front porch right now. Or else it'd be pretty rowdy in there. But it's just so damn competitive. And, I moved out here and I love the competitiveness. I met Steiniger and Shorty Bruns when I was at Dublin Kaufman. We talked a lot then, became good friends. I actually took your advice, Sonny. I gave her a call today on my way into the weight room. We kind of chatted. I asked her if she had any tips for New Bremen. And I'll leave out what she said, but she said, no thanks. She said pass. But we just talked about coaching and the competitiveness of the MAC, and how we agreed that how tough it is here, and it's just built different.
I'm going to
let me jump in here a second, Sonny. We get letters from all over the state throughout our season of shows, Anthony, about the Midwest Athletic Conference and about the excellence in football. But as you and Sonny have talked about, it definitely spreads through the other sports. It's rare we don't have a MAC team playing for a berth in a state championship game or getting to the Final Four. And we also, Sonny and I also commiserate a lot off air about other letters we get where an increasing number of people have an issue with the way that we celebrate excellence on the site. We follow teams that win, and we follow teams that win because teams that win garner a lot of attention, and we're in the business of appealing to as many sets of eyeballs as we can. But from a perspective of a coach, I wonder if you could speak to what pursuing excellence does for young people beyond the time they play volleyball for Marion Local, beyond the time they play for New Bremen. What does it do? What does it do to a young person? What is the value of it? And what would you say to those people who say, well, you guys at Press Pros and some high schools emphasize winning too much? What's your response?
I'm going to try to tread somewhat safely here so I don't put my foot in my mouth. But I believe in tough love. My dad was 20 years Navy. I was just telling the other girls the other night after we beat St. Henry in the locker room, and I looked at him. I said, hey, I always promised myself my dad waited till I was 27 before he told me he was proud of me of anything. So I looked at him and I told him I was proud of him, but we're not done. So it's that competitive drive. I don't believe in handing anybody anything. I don't believe in and holding their hand and walking them anywhere. I believe in the kids dressing the coach first. I'm pretty traditional that way. I try to stay up to date with the X's and O's, but the traditional part of it, I think that's what makes solid character out of people. So when they come in and put in the work, you can't shortcut it. You got to know what kind of work you want to put in. You can't just sit there and show up in the gym and sweat. That's not enough. You got to have direction with that, and you got to have purpose, and you got to be able to communicate that, and you got to be able to listen, and you got to be able to, transfer that back through communication. I don't believe that I would ever walk with my daughter or any one of my sons or my other daughter into a job interview and say, hey, this is why you're going to hire my kid. They need to do it themselves. And that's kind of what you're training them for. it's a life experience. The people that can handle being in a team sport, that is what it's about. You're going to be able to work with others. And then, there's only going to be so many people that own their own business, right off the get-go, right out of school, and being able to do that. And if you want to be an individual, that's fine. I think you can still be an individual in a team atmosphere. But the moment you can learn how to follow, then that's the best way I think you can learn how to lead, because you need to know both sides of it. And that's where that hard work comes from. You need to be able to be pushed. I don't really believe in the coaches that try to break kids down and build them back up. I'm not saying that, but I think you need to find out where your breaking point is as a player yourself, so that way you know how to push. And when you think you're coming up against a wall, if you don't find out where it's at, then how do you know? You need to find out where that finish line is, and hopefully your finish line is well beyond the actual finish line.
Tony, one of the things that I tell people, and I'm almost 70 years old now, and I've lived this as well as can talk this. Everything that you do in your life is a competition. You have to win. You got to win the school you want, the job, the career, the spouse. Everything is a competition in life. And where else Absolutely. Can you learn that but except from people like you and what you're going out and teaching every day in the gym, the weight room, and everything you do with your kids?
No, I'm just always excited that I get to provide that opportunity for the kids. That's what I enjoy. It's always one thing to be able to control it yourself, but if you can just prepare somebody and kind of guide them through it, I feel like that's more giving. Kind of like when you talk about giving at Christmas instead of receiving. It's one of those great feelings. And we got a lot of girls on our team. We only graduated one last year, so we got 7 seniors this year. Lydia Eifert, Lindsay Koenig, Stella Hilsman, Reagan Kramer, Nicole Frank, Eve Mesher, and Julia Moeller. We got 7 seniors. We went 8-16 last year, but we almost knocked off St. Henry in a great 5-set match because we were playing right at the right time. That was a lot of kids that had no experience going into the season. And, we got it together at the right time. At any point, I think if we were in a softer area, and I put air quotes around that, interpret it however you want, those kids would either quit, gave up, found another sport, or try to figure out something else to buy their way around it or find an easy workout. Those kids came in. I said, hey, we start up in April with, our fitness program, conditioning gyms, open gyms and stuff like that. And they said, why don't we start in March? So they had the right attitude and they were ready to get after it. All these kids play 2-3 sports, and they, on top of that, somehow find time for club and AAU. And I know they give their all in whatever sport they're in. And kudos to them. I mean, these are some tough kids. I know they got tough parents because they take pride in it. When I was at Dublin Coffin, sometimes people were worried about the name on the back of the jersey. You would always, talk about that. The name on the front means more. Here, I think the name on the back of the jersey means a lot too, but not in that sense that that's going to give you any sense of entitlement. It's a privilege to wear that last name, and they take pride in it because they know when they go home that they represented their family right. They represent the community right.
I'm going to admit to you, when I talked to Dan Koenig, who's your athletic director 3 or 4 years ago, the first time I met you, and I said, point out to me the new volleyball coach. And he pointed at you, and I said, that's the volleyball coach? Because, first impressions, I look at you and here's a guy who's into powerlifting or maybe played right tackle someplace. This doesn't – people would probably like to know how in the world you got tricked up with volleyball.
Played at a sand volleyball bar in Columbus at Flanagan. So I played 3 sports at Dublin Soda. I played football, and then I played basketball. Then once I got a little bit bigger junior year, switched it over to wrestling, and then I did baseball and switched it over to lacrosse in the spring. But for workouts, we would always go, Top Gun was always a great movie. The first one, not the new one.
Yeah.
So they played sand volleyball, so we would always go play doubles after. We'd have morning running for wrestling, then we'd turn around and we'd have our 3-hour practice and go for a 45-minute lift. And I don't know how the hell we still had energy, but we went to the bar that we weren't supposed to be at, and we played sand volleyball on the back, 2 versus 2, and started playing there and ran into some guys that actually knew what they were doing. So they started teaching me the doubles game, and that's how I learned from the get-go, was on the beach side of it, which is a completely different sport, even though it's the same idea and shares a name, but it's 2 completely different beasts. Then some of the guys said, hey, if we want to play in the winter, why don't we start playing 6-on-6 indoor? And I mean, that was a whole big transition there. And that's how I met my wife, Margot. She was actually refereeing at one of the gyms. So kind of crossed paths there. And I taught her the beach game. She taught me the indoor game. And a stud like her, she's, played at Dayton University, take her in the sand. And then she didn't have her sand legs yet. She changed the direction. She's in the ground. And I'm sitting there thinking we're going to do pretty well in some co-ed tournaments. We didn't do so hot, guys. The wind, the sun, and that happened. And then when we would go to indoor, I didn't do so hot there either, because I kept jumping in front of people because you're used to 2 people on the court instead of 6. So it was a whole different dynamic. Excellent. So that's where it all started. And I met her future roommate, ended up being the JV coach at Dublin Kaufman, talked to the head coach, Marianne Souter, hopped on with her for about 6 years and learned a ton there. She had a whole system set up, and I want to say that she knocked down her district title. I want to say it was like 7-8 times in a row out of the Central in the OCC, and made a couple state runs there. Made it past regionals a couple times, so they were a powerhouse for a while. Just knocking girls into Division I college. I think a couple went to Hawaii, Nebraska, Central Florida, name it. They had some big time players on the same team. So.
Okay, Anthony Chappel, our guest tonight, is the head volleyball coach at Marion Local. I want to take a minute, and before we get you off here, I want you. Sure. I think you do such a great job of just representing the sport, like Diana does, like some of the other great coaches, Tim Metz, and some of those people. I want you to take a moment and tell people why tomorrow night is not only so important. That match between New Bremen and Marion is not only important. It's not the end of the world, because it's an open tournament, and you guys are both going to make a really good run toward the Division IV title, and you're in
right, God willing,
But talk about tomorrow night and why that is so special. Going maybe back to what we opened with tonight about just volleyball and people don't understand of just how fun, how entertaining it is to watch.
In the blink of an eye, you can miss a point. Every little point matters. I know that I think Aaron Watkins down in Rushi always talks about winning the moment. That's been his thing this year. I saw Diana in one of her articles, living in the moment or being in the moment.
Yes, sir.
And ours has been owning the moment. So it's all kind of the same idea, same kind of mantra. Like when that moment comes up, we talk to the girls, you can either let the moment own you or you own the moment. So there's going to be a lot of big moments tomorrow. Every little point's going to count, because it could lead to a big string of points, and we're hoping that those string of points are on our side. I know me and Diana have probably equal time prepared. I know we actually do text and chat a lot. We're actually pretty good friends. We scouted together their first year when they played Calvert. St. Henry played New Bremen in regionals, and they were going to play. The winner was going to play Calvert next, or Miller City, and you kind of knew it was Calvert. They were coming in pretty loaded. So I stuck around and I said, hey, you can send your girls back on the bus. I'll scout with you, and I drove her home that night in the snowstorm. So that's all, that's just the camaraderie we go through. Like we know we're all putting the time in. The biggest thing is, I don't know if you know this about me, Sonny, but like I said, my dad was in the Navy, so we moved up and down the East Coast. He grew up in the Bronx, big Yankees fan. After my parents split up, we needed something to kind of watch together and argue about. So he always liked the Jets. I like the Pats. He always liked the Knicks. I like the Celtics. And he always liked the Yankees. I like the Sox. And saw that you compared New Bremen to the Yankees, so it's pretty fitting there. But I don't think it's just a shiny little thing. I watched the movie Catch Me If You Can. I like movies a lot. And when Christopher Walken's talking to DiCaprio's son, he says, you know why the Yankees always win? He says, no, why is that? They got Mickey Mantle? He says, no, they're always looking at their pinstripes. They get distracted because it's this big aura. And then he finally talks to Tom Hanks at the end. He says, hey, you know why the Yankees always win? It's because of the pinstripes. And Hanks goes, no, they got Mickey frickin' Mantle. That's why.
I agree.
So
excellent. Bruce?
Well, great to meet you, Anthony. And
absolutely,
we appreciate the way you plug into young people's lives and into your community and the way you represent your community. And you're just another in a long list of great coaches that we're fortunate to cover at Press Pros. And we thank you very much for your time tonight.
Nope, I appreciate all kind words. yeah, all those girls are amazing, and I definitely still learn from them. You know, I'm 15 years into a coaching career, and I learn from them every day as much as hopefully they learn from me. And
Well,
I appreciate you guys reaching out too.
I told Bruce when I told him this afternoon, I said, this guy's going to be special tonight. He's going to be great, and you were, and I appreciate your time because I know you got a lot to think about for the next 24 hours. We appreciate you sharing it with us.
Yeah, absolutely, guys.
All right. Thanks so much, Anthony. Good luck tomorrow night.
Go Flyers.
There you go. Anthony Chappel, the head coach at Marion Local, joining us here. And they're number 2 and New Bremen is number 1 in D4. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, there are 2 teams that are, unique. As I said to him, I'm learning this game, a lot because to me, the only volleyball I ever knew was family reunions where you lined up out on the yard, and you try to hit your cousin in the nose with the ball. But these 2 teams, as uniquely similar as they are really different as well. And I think when you go and watch them play tomorrow night, you're going to be people who watch that are going to be just blown away by the competitiveness, the athleticism, their ability to, as he said, own the moment, live in the moment, be the moment. It's a game of runs and momentum. And, you're going to give up 8 or 10 points at a time. They call timeout, go in, regroup, they come back out, and you see the same swing just, reverse itself. So it's a great game. It's wonderful to watch. It's everything you want to see for 2 hours of entertainment because I guarantee you that could very easily go 5 sets tomorrow night. And it's certainly worth $9 if that's what they charge to get in.
Well, I know your pictures will be phenomenal because your volleyball pictures are always phenomenal. And I look forward to reading your account of the game tomorrow night. It's just one of the things that we cover at Press Pros. We cover Ohio State. They didn't have too much of a problem on Saturday night with Toledo.
No.
They'll have Wisconsin this coming Saturday night. I don't know. It won't be 77-21, but they'll probably breeze through that one too because Wisconsin's already lost at home to Washington State. We've got is this the 3rd week of MAC play? I believe it is the 3rd week of MAC play.
Yes, of conference play.
The big game last week, of course, was, speaking of Marion Local, the Flyers defeated New Bremen. Tim Goodwin was very complimentary of New Bremen. Of course, they're in different divisions. Marion Local's number 1 in Division 6, a loaded Division 6. New Bremen continues to be highly ranked in Division 7 and will make a lot of noise there with David Homan. Chris Schmidt doing a good job with New Bremen. Marion Local this week will be in our spotlight again as they'll be on the road at Versailles, and Versailles shockingly lost a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying to remember who beat them. Was it New Bremen that beat Versailles?
It was New Bremen, 14-7.
Yeah. So the Versailles are defending Division 5 champ. They're Division 6 this year. They get Marion Local at home. Fort Recovery is at, I got to put my glasses on to read this one. Well, they're at New Bremen. St. Henry's at Minster. Parkway's at Coldwater. And Anna is at Delphus. Those are our games in the MAC. Troy plays at Sydney. And I didn't look up where Piqua is. Do you know off the top of your head where Piqua's playing?
At home with Fairborn.
Okay, Piqua's at home with Fairborn, and that should be a W for the Indians even without Brady Uhl because Troy handled Fairborn this past week to get to 3-2, and Piqua handled Troy 59-0 a couple weeks ago. So I know those comparative scores don't always hold up, but in that case, I'm betting that they will. In Central Ohio, big shout out to the Gahanna Lincoln Lions. They defeated Pickerington Central on Friday night, 22-20. First time Bruce Ward, the head coach at Gahanna, has beaten Pick Central. I think he was 0-7 against them. I think Pick Central, which has reached the regional finals 6 years in a row. 6 years in a row. What a job by Jay Sherritt at Central. Central's now 2-3 at the midway point, but I wouldn't count them out because they got a lot of pride in that program. But Gahanna Lincoln is rolling. Surprising loss to me. I thought that New Albany had the easiest path to a 5-0 start of anybody in the OCC, but they lost at home to Olentangy Liberty. I was a little uneasy about that one. As soon as I wrote it, I thought, watch Liberty come back and beat them, and they did. Jerome is 5-0, but wow, Dublin Jerome had a phenomenal backup running back go in the game last week for their injured starter, Luke McLaughlin, and Kale Abdul-Haq gained 100 yards rushing, played both ways at linebacker, and late in the game broke his ankle. So we certainly feel bad for Kale Abdul-Haq and Jerome. We'll see what Jerome has this week as they are, I wrote it down, they got Worthington at Jerome, and Worthington is 4-1. Worthington is a surprise team this year. So that's a little bit about what happened in week 5 and looking ahead to week 6.
Well, before we go to week 6, I'll take a moment and give a shout out tonight to our host here in Piqua, the Skynet Internet Company in downtown Piqua on Main Street, purveyors of excellent Wi-Fi service to West Central Ohio, and they cover Miami, Shelby, Dark Preble, Logan, Clark, Champaign, Auglaize, and Mercer counties. Give them a call. If you've got sketchy internet out in the country, and a lot of people do, including myself, until I met Craig Grissom, and he hooked us up, and we run the empire pretty much through Skynet Internet now, and give them a call at 773-0998 in downtown Piqua. Craig Grissom will answer the phone when you call. So it's that kind of a small business mentality where they really take care of their customers. They're not so big that they can't know you and your needs by first name or on a first name basis. So 773-0998, Skynet Internet, hosting us in downtown Piqua tonight, and we appreciate them and their support of what we do.
I may have to get a hold of your man there at Skynet to hook up my brother out in Logan County. He has bad internet issues, but I did not know that Skynet serviced the Logan County area.
I got the list right here.
There you go.
In case they go, we'll tell you about, and they say they can help people in Logan County.
Fantastic. Well, he's kind of halfway between Jackson Center and Russell's Point, so that'll work just fine.
Right.
Let's go to your thoughts on Marion Local and New Bremen, Sonny, as you got to take that one in. And I came out of it thinking that maybe Tim Goodwin wasn't all that happy with how his team played in that football game, which, a win is always nice, but he has a high standard of excellence there at Marion Local. Did I read the comments wrong, or were there some things that Coach Goodwin thought maybe could have been a little bit sharper for Marion Local in getting to 5-0?
Well, first of all, these are my observations. I never want to put words in Tim Goodwin's mouth, but I don't think any coach liked coming out and turning the ball over the first 2 possessions you have. And they did that with an interception and a fumble. They got off to a horrible start, as did New Bremen. Now, I don't know if that's nerves or if that's just quality of play, kids making plays, but neither team started off particularly well. But, coaches make such a big deal out of handling adversity. And there's no question, I think both coaches talked to this after the game the other night, that Marion handled it better than what New Bremen did. New Bremen at one point was down 22-7 before they got a field goal on the board before halftime. One thing that impressed me was I think either during a timeout or at the end of the quarter, Tim got his kids together and said, settle down and play. Let's go back to power football. Let's win the line of scrimmage. Let's do the things that make us comfortable, and then we'll throw in a little icing on the cake as we go. And that's pretty much, I know that sounds trite to describe it that way, but I thought that's what they did. And then, of course, in the second half, that wonderful defense that they have started really teeing off on people. They did a wonderful job, by the way. I think David Holman, I've written this and people question it, but I think David Holman's the most impactful player, offensive player in the MAC. He's just hard to get a beat on, and they put a beat on him a couple of times. They got good hits on him a couple of times, but they kept him in front. And when you look at the final score, 38-16, they got a touchdown late in the game, to make it look like, we competed a little bit. But Marion wore on them the other night, and I think Chris Schmidt would say, hey, look, we didn't play our best here tonight, but we're going to learn. In fact, he said, and this was his quote, every time you play Marion, they're going to teach you something about football, about competing, about being a man, about, you can read into everything that he was talking about. And he said, and if you don't take advantage of that, you're really missing something special. He made a point of saying, when you get to play Marion Local, it is a special opportunity because you either come out of it as a better football team with a better view on what's your future and what you need to do to be better in the future.
Well, I'm curious. You've seen David Homan a lot, and I know you've been a big fan of David Homan's for a long time. I wonder, have you seen Marcel Blasingame yet? You've seen him once, right?
I've seen him once, and I saw him play a lot as a sophomore and a junior, just not at quarterback.
Yeah, he's a totally different player this year at quarterback.
David Holman is the quickest player in the MAC. He may be one of the quickest players in 3 or 4 leagues around here. Teams just don't get a good shot at him because of his ability to change direction on a dime. People think he runs, and they do run a lot, their offense through him, but he also is a better than adequate passer. He's got a good arm. I'm not sure he has the receiving talent that he had last year with Nick Allig and some of the people that they've lost over the last couple of years that could go catch the ball. But he's got a couple of kids there that are really coming on quickly. Aaron Tiemann, number 1, point guard on the basketball team, is a good athlete. You can just see him week by week, the game of football beginning to settle in more, him getting more comfortable, more instinctive about how to get open, how to use his body to screen away defenders and catch the football. So it wasn't their night the other night, but it is in a lot of people's nights when you play New Bremen or when you play Marion Local.
Well, it's going to be interesting. They obviously won't play again this year because New Bremen, as we said, is Division 7, Marion Local's Division 6. And even with that loss, New Bremen is second in Division 7, Region 28, behind Catholic Central. Catholic Central will have an opportunity to get a lot of computer points a little bit later on. They're 5-0 right now. They play Greenview, and Greenview handled Mechanicsburg, which previously, I think Mechanicsburg was a little overrated. They were ranked number 1 in the state for a while. They lost their top 2 players last year, but Mechanicsburg comes in there behind Ansonia in 3rd, Mechanicsburg 4th, and then Riverside, that's the top 5. Minster is 7th. Minster's having a pretty nice season compared to what they did a year ago. Minster and Lorme are both 3-2, and they come in at 7 and 8. So that bears watching, and I'm interested to see how that Division 7 breaks down, because there are a lot of people happy in Division 7. They don't have to deal with Marion Local this year in Division 7. And I know Newark Catholic would have been happy if they didn't have to deal with Marion Local last year in Division 7, because that game was a walkover pretty quickly up at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. All right, let's delve into the Readers Speaks comments. You said you had a couple for us this week. What do you got?
Well, one of the things I want to talk about before we get into to emails to Press Pros is I have people every day say, boy, you guys give an awful lot of attention to the MAC conference. Well, here's why. Of our readership metrics last weekend, we had over 5,000 people from around the state of Ohio check the MAC outcomes on Press Pros Magazine, from Northwest Ohio, from Northeast Ohio, from Trumbull County, from Auglaize County, from Lake County, Geauga, Cuyahoga. This is a conference that has become iconic among conferences in Ohio High School Athletic Association football, and I'm privileged that many people have the respect for our coverage and our commitment to them and the area of football in this area up and down I-75. When you talk about the MVC and the GWAC and the Three Rivers Conference, the MAC, and everything we do, to have that many people from those counties I just listed just log on and check out and see how Marion and New Bremen went. And you said a moment ago about, hey, a lot of people are glad to be in Division 7 this year because Marion's not there. You make a very good point, because we actually have a letter here from Wade in Trumbull County, which is the home of Warren JFK. Read your story about the New Bremen game with Marion Local. How do you like their chances this year? Speaking of New Bremen against Warren JFK, is Holman, David Holman, as good a quarterback as the one who beat JFK in 2020? Well, Wade, thank you for the email, and we'll know more after Friday night, because you've got a big JFK's got a big game coming up Friday night against Mogadore, and Mogadore has been a fixture in Division 6 to Division 7 football for years and years, so they'll be a test. But to compare David Holman with Mitchell Hayes, who was a quarterback on that 2020 team, I think Mitchell Hayes probably probably had the edge in throwing, but they're both very athletic. They both run very well. The one thing I think that you need to know about this particular team, the guy who scored the big touchdown run to break that game open in the first quarter in 2020, and Bruce, you were there on the sidelines with me, was Hunter Schaefer. And he's still playing tailback this year as the senior for New Bremen. and one of the leading rushers in the MAC this year. So it's not just a matter of David Holman. It's Hunter Schaefer who's going to go out and get his 100 yards on a given night. So they're more than just a one-trick pony. They're getting better by the week and throwing the ball. Hunter Schaefer's still there, and I was impressed the other night, the last couple of weeks, in fact, particularly against Versailles, at how well their defense is coming of age, and that pursuit of the football and how much they support each other. So to answer your question, is this as good a team? Hold on now. It's only 5 weeks. So the biggest 5 weeks are yet to come. And I'll know better in a couple of weeks about how good New Bremen is.
Well, to that point, Sonny, it was just about this point in the season 2 years ago when you and I watched Coldwater go into New Bremen and pretty much dictate the game. I wouldn't say dominate the game, but they dictated the game that night. And neither one of us left that night thinking that we were looking at two teams that were going to win state championships. And, New Bremen really blossomed after that point and went on and won the state title. And now those guys, as you mentioned, Schaefer, Homan, they've done it. They've got the experience. That sophomore class now are seniors, and they've got the experience of having done it. And that allows you to play with a lot of confidence when you get in close games. That team's won a lot of close games. They broke away from Warren JFK in the second half of that title game. They got a big block punt, as we've talked about. That's etched in MAC lore forever, that block punt that beat Marion Local in the playoffs that year for New Bremen. So there's an advantage to having been there and done it. And New Bremen has been there, and they have done it under Chris Schmidt. One of the great stories that we have written at Press Pros is the rebirth of New Bremen football. They were just about ready to cancel New Bremen football when Chris Schmidt came there from Bell Fountain. And he had gotten let go at Bell Fountain, but he was the right man for the right time in the right town, and they have really taken off since he's gotten there.
Well, to your point that you made a minute ago about it being a wide open division this year in 7, there's another one that's that way, and I'm going to address another letter here, an email here in a second. I mentioned Mogendorf, who's 5-0 going into the JFK game on Friday night, but they're 5-0 against teams with a cumulative record of under 500. So 5-0, 5-0 is wonderful, but 5-0 against who? So I think that Mogador has a wonderful history of titles won and being runners up, and like I said, in small school football, beat Covington here one year, way back when, for a state title. But it does paint the picture as to how much opportunity there is for a New Bremen, there is for a JFK, for a Mogador, all these good teams, competitive teams with great legacies of winning in the past. How wide open 7 is this year, because Marion Local is not there. They're in Division 6. From Ironton, a writer named Jim said, been watching your show. Speaking of this one, heard you mention Ironton a couple of weeks ago, and Bruce, you'll remember that. How do you like their chances to win Division 5 this year? Bruce, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that because you saw them play a couple of years ago. But my short answer is, Jim, in your own region, you got some people there that'll have a case of the goo-goo for Ironton. For people who don't understand Southern Ohio, and I grew up in Lawrence County, so I know Ironton. They've won two state titles over the years, but they have lost in the title game 8 times. They literally are the Mount Rushmore of high school football along the Ohio River because of their record of getting to the title game. But you got Harvest Prep in your region with Wheelersburg. I'll even mention Fairland High School. They're in Proctorville. From our own area here in Division 5 this year, you'd have to go through Milton Union and Valley View. And I think Ironton has played Valley View before. Liberty Center and Coldwater up in the Northwest. South Range and Edison High School are both having excellent seasons up north. So it won't be easy. But again, some of my coaching sources tell me that proportionally of all the divisions this year, going back to what I just said, 5 and 7 are the most wide open. So I know they got a good team. I know they've got Division 1 talent. A couple of kids going to places like Cincinnati and Marshall. So yeah, the Fighting Tigers this year are going to be in the mix for it, as they should be.
Yeah, and you mentioned about who have you played? And that's one of the things that's really helping Coldwater in Division 5 is that they have a win over Bell Fountain, and Bell Fountain is a Division 3 team, and that's Bell Fountain's only loss. So when you're a Division 5 team like Coldwater and you've beaten a Bell Fountain, which is a really good team and plays 2 divisions above you, that's really going to serve you well in the computer rankings. You were talking about the amount of traffic that we got this past weekend from places around the state that want to read about MAC football on our site. I'm going to guarantee you that a lot of those page views are coming from fans of 2 teams,
Kirtland
and Cary.
Yes, sir.
Because both those teams are in Division 6 this year, a loaded Division 6. Cary's your defending champion. They beat Coldwater in a state title last year. So Cary's the Division 6 defending champ. Kirtland was the Division 5 runner-up to Versailles. Kirtland drops down to Division 6. You've got Marion in Division 6. And so to me, it's pretty obvious that the fans of Kirtland and Marion and Kirtland have a long history in the playoffs apart from this season, whatever history they may forge this season. But I would say that a lot of that traffic is Cary and Kirtland checking in on Marion Local.
Well, and as you say that, my phone here is lighting up with people who are watching and, trying to get into us and asking questions about this team and that. We don't have time to get into that tonight, but read Press Pros this weekend or throughout the week, and our coverage of high school football this week, I think may give you a little bit of an answer as to what you want to know. I got this for you, Bruce, because you and I both have so much high regard for Blackie. From Tom in Columbus, I saw you had Snyder on last week talking about the Buckeyes. Any chance you can have Blackledge, that's our own Steve Blackledge, on next week to talk about OCC football? Really like the Press Pros site. Tom, I know you write in. I know you're a frequent reader of the site, and you write to us frequently, and we appreciate your support and taking the time. And Bruce, what about Blackie next week?
Well, I'm fine with that. I will just say, when you and I talked about expanding Press Pros into Central Ohio, we said there's a way to do it, and there's a way to do it right. And the only way to do it right is to have Steve Blackledge on the team.
You bet your life.
And Steve Blackledge was an absolute must-get for us, because to live to the name of our site, Press Pros, there is no more professional person when it comes to covering prep sports in Central Ohio than Steve Blackledge. He knows everybody. Everybody knows him. Everybody loves him. He is an amazing fountain of information, and he does a tremendous job for us. I have the privilege of editing Blackie's stories, and that is a complete overstatement, because pretty much all I do is format it and send it out exactly as he writes it, because his copy is super clean, and I know when not to mess with great work. And Steve is just amazing, and we are blessed to have him on our site, and he gives us amazing credibility in the OCC, because credibility that no one else could match. And so we're very happy to have him, and if he wants to come on, we'd love to have him on.
Well, I know a lot of people across the landscape of Ohio, and certainly around in this particular area in West Central Ohio. And I'm blown away when I go to tournaments with him and sit down with him, just like at the baseball tournament this year. We were in a suite at the stadium in Akron, and just talking about all the people, all the coaches he's known, all the athletic directors he's known, all the players who graduated and played in the OCC 6, 8, 10, 12 years ago. Now they've gone through college. Now they're in the NFL. And Steve can give you chapter and verse about where they played, when they played, what they did, the game they had against so-and-so on the night he was there. He's Rain Man when it comes to recalling all that stuff, the history of what he's seen in Central Ohio prep sports. He is a special, special individual.
Yep, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So I'm wide open to more reader feedback, or we can thank everyone for watching us tonight and urge them to watch the replay and tell their friends about the replay. What else?
Well, I think the thing that I appreciate, I want to make sure I got the opportunity to thank those people who are watching tonight or who are going to watch the replay of this from other parts of the state. We do get those. I do see them. They come in on Facebook. They come in, the emails that come in on a daily basis. We really appreciate. I particularly appreciate hearing from the people in Ironton and Proctorville and Wheelersburg, because I grew up down there. And people say, "Well, you're always talking about Southern Ohio. What's so special about Southern Ohio?" Well, I was 14 when I left there. So I know all those coaches. I know the legacy of Ironton football and how many times they've been to the state finals, the disappointments. You're talking about some bitter trips home from Massillon and Canton. That's a long, long drive to Ironton. And if you're not aware of it, that's the southernmost tip in the state of Ohio. It's right there at the Ohio River, across from Ashland, Kentucky, and Huntington, West Virginia. And those people have lived some hard disappointments over the years at the hands of Ironton football in the state tournament. So, it means something. And I know they're very committed to it this year, because, as I said, they've got some Division I talent on that team going to college next year. And they really believe that this is their year to break through. And there's no Kirtland in Division V this year. Ironton's in 5, Kirtland's in 6.
Well, and one other team that comes to mind in terms of that, and they don't have any state titles, but they are a team that a lot of people think might be their year to win a state title, is Cleveland Glenville in Division II. Glenville has had, they've had Heisman Trophy winners, they've had All-Americans, they've had 10-year NFL veterans. They've never managed to win a state championship. So they came down here to Columbus this year. Old Tangi Liberty gave them a really good game. Glenville is a team that a lot of people think might have a long tournament run in them. So
right.
They're kind of like Ironton, although Ironton has managed to do it. And, the other legacy program that everybody's heard of, but has never won a state championship on the field is Massillon, Washington.
Yeah.
Massillon, Washington's never won a state championship on the field. By
the way, Massillon, Washington is the Massillon Tigers.
That is correct.
Not to be confused with Massillon
Jackson or Massillon Perry or whatever.
Right.
No,
the other high schools up there. The Massillon Tigers are Washington High School.
When people say Massillon, they mean Massillon, Washington.
They mean Washington. Right.
That's Paul Brown. That's Chris Spielman.
Earl Bruce.
That's Earl Bruce. That's Washington High School, and they've won mythical national titles, because there's not a real high school national tournament. But back when they were dominating Ohio high school football, there was no computer playoff, of course. It was a poll championship. So let's see. How can I say this? There's a former NFL great who played in the MAC, who has ties to Ohio State, who likes to tease Chris Spielman about the Massillon Tigers being the paper Tigers, because their only polls are on paper. Their only state championships are
on paper, right?
The paper Tigers. Yeah.
Shame on you, Jim Lachey.
I didn't say it, Jimmy. I didn't give you up.
I've heard that. I actually asked that question to Earl Bruce one time, and he didn't take it very well.
Yeah.
He didn't take it very well. But, going back to Ironton, a lot of people don't know that the Ironton Tanks were one of the original NFL teams. That goes back, 20s? And they still play in the original Tank Stadium. It's got the big grandstand over the stadium that keeps you out of the rain and the snow. It's a heck of a thing if you're ever on the Ohio River to stop in Ironton and drive, down, get off of Route 52 there and swing by the high school there and see their football complex. They take it seriously. And as I said before, if Marion Local is the Mount Rushmore of Division VI football in West Central Ohio, then certainly the Ironton Tigers are that in Lawrence County.
All right. Well, everybody keep watching the site. We'll have Lowdown presented by Layman's throughout the rest of the week. We'll debut the games that we're going to be covering Friday night on Thursday. And we appreciate you guys watching the Huddle show on Monday night, and clue your friends in to watch the replay, particularly if you're a fan of Marion Local and you want to catch Anthony Chappel's interview. He joined us at the top of the show. We want to thank him again for joining us. We want to thank all our sponsors who make what we do possible, and we hope that when you're out and about, you will thank our sponsors for being supporters of the PressProsMagazine.com site. Follow us on Instagram at Press Pros Magazine, on Twitter at Press Pros Mag, and our Facebook page also posts all of our stories, and we certainly love to read your comments if you leave them on Facebook or send them to the Reader Speaks at PressProsMagazine.com.
Thanks again to Anthony Chappel coming on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I told you he would be good. He was great. And tomorrow night, if you have any interest in volleyball and you're within a 30-minute drive of that place, that'll be a special night for OHSAA volleyball tomorrow night, because that's two of the very best in any of the 4 divisions in Ohio, teeing up against each other tomorrow night at Marion Local High School, probably in the 6:30, 6:45 range for opening tip.
And if people would like to see your outstanding photography and read your story, will that be on the site around what, midnight?
I would say it'll be up tomorrow night by 11:30 or something like that.
All right, very good. So reminder again, all the content on PressProsMagazine.com is free, no paywall ever. We don't shut anybody out. We want you to read our stuff, share our stuff, comment on our stuff. We appreciate the attention that you give us and the time you give us very, very much. So thanks to our friends at Skynet Internet Services in Piqua for making Sonny's appearance on the show tonight. Glitch-free.
Glitch-free,
yeah. And if you need rural internet, what are those counties again? You have those right in front of you?
Yeah, I got them right here in front. If you live in Miami, Shelby, Dark, Preble, Logan, Clark, Champaign, Auglaize, Mercer, anywhere in West Central Ohio, give them a call. It's 937-773-0998. Craig Grissom himself will answer the phone, and it starts from there. You'll like their service, and you'll like what they have to tell you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Fulks. I will talk to you later on this week. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you out and about at the games this weekend.
Ditto.